Hi, my name is Liz Frost, and I'm the Technical Specialist for honeybees with the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. Today I'll talk to you about what you should look for if your hives have been affected by drought or bushfire. If they've survived bushfire, there are a few key things that you should be looking for in terms of the health and ongoing status of your hive. So when bushfire goes through and your hives have survived, there may be issues resulting from radiant heat, lack of food source, for example. So in some instances, requeening will be necessary. In other circumstances, the food sources that were surrounding that apiary site may now be burnt and they may take years to recover. So in that case, you most likely will be moving your remaining beehives to ideally an area with floral resources. We'll be going through different supplemental feeding regimes and talking about protein feeding and sugar feeding. So we'll talk about sugar feeding first. When bees are at risk of starvation, we can supplementally feed those bees with sugar syrup or granulated sugar as their primary supplemental carbohydrate source. So what we'll show you now is different scales of sugar feeding, and what that sugar feeding does is stimulate the hive to produce royal jelly. It stimulates pollen foraging, importantly, and wax production. So if your hives are low in population, sugar syrup feeding in autumn will be a must for you. A small scale way of feeding sugar syrup is just with this kind of a bottle feeder in the front entrance. This generic bottle has sugar syrup in it at a 50% mix of 1:1 water to sugar. The bees can drink that syrup up through a little output on the bottom and take it into the hive and use it as a ready-to-eat food. Another way to feed 1:1 sugar syrup is through a top feeder. So if you have a stronger hive, they may find top feeders accessible to access that sugar syrup through these different feeding stations in the corner and in the middle there. So this is more for a stronger population of hive. So our next method for feeding sugar syrup is a frame feeder. This is for a smaller population. So if you look in this hive here, you'll see an in-hive frame feeder that we'd put liquid syrup in and the bees can access. As our temperatures are getting colder, we'll want bees to store food versus using it immediately for their needs. So we may up the sugar concentration in that sugar syrup from a 1:1 mix to a 2:1 mix, so 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. Or if you're in colder locations and you haven't had a good chance to get your hives to store sugar syrup for their immediate needs over winter, you may also, on a smaller scale, choose to feed granulated sugar. So we'll just look at this small hive here, which has an inner hive mat and a pile of granulated sugar on top, which bees can eat at their leisure. And this is just dry granulated sugar. The bees will hydrate that and use it for their carbohydrate needs. So the last thing we'll talk about is bees' protein needs. Honeybees get protein from pollen from plants, and that's their best source of protein. So if you can't move your apiary site to where there are diverse proteins from pollen sources, a beekeeper may choose to supplementally feed protein. One of those sources is irradiated bee collected pollen. So this is a bag, commercially available bag of irradiated bee collected pollen. So the importance of irradiation is to neutralize all bacterial spores, fungal pathogens that could be transmitted by bee-collected pollen. There are also other sources of protein available to beekeepers that have no honeybee-collected pollen in them, so those are an alternate source of protein. And importantly, those should be milled to a fine grain, otherwise bees will have a difficult time to collect it. Proteins from pollen are very important to bees because it's their source of crude protein, fats, lipids, fatty acids, minerals, and amino acids that they can't naturally produce themselves. There's sources out there on the web that are free for beekeepers. For example, our New South Wales DPI Prime Facts, one by Dr. Doug Somerville on supplementary feeding is a really good one, as well as an AgriFutures publication called Fat Bees, Skinny Bees, also by Doug Somerville. Our Ag Guide Healthy Bees, so New South Wales DPI has the Ag Guide series, which tells beekeepers from all scales how to look for health in their hives, how to supplemental feed, and various other management topics.